Number 1.
After my first relationship ended when I was 21, I spent about a year adjusting to single life. It had been a while since I'd been on my own, so it took some time to get used to it again. Eventually, I decided it was time to start dating again, so I began exploring different dating apps. One of the apps I frequently used was Meet Connect, and I matched with a girl named Jasmine. Her profile caught my attention because we shared many common interests. Jasmine was a beautiful, light-skinned woman with a warm smile. We chatted for a while and decided to meet up for dinner. The plan was for me to pick her up at her place around 6:30 in the evening. By the time I arrived, the sun had set and it was getting dark. I texted Jasmine to let her know I was there, but she took a little while to respond. I sat in my car, anxiously waiting, watching the chat bubble appear and disappear. Finally, she replied, apologizing for the delay and mentioning that her brother would come out to meet me first. She explained that he was being overprotective. Although I wasn't thrilled about the idea of meeting her brother, I understood her situation and agreed. A few moments later, the front door of the house opened and a tall guy walked out, heading towards my car. As I stepped out to greet him, I noticed that he looked quite different from Jasmine, with much darker skin. It struck me as odd that they didn't seem related, but I brushed it off. He introduced himself as Marcus and seemed friendly enough. We exchanged pleasantries, and he started talking about wanting to make sure I was a decent guy before I took his sister out. He seemed normal, and we talked for a bit before he invited me inside to meet Jasmine. I followed him into the house, and as soon as we were inside, he closed the door behind me. He asked me to wait in the living room while he went upstairs to get Jasmine. As I looked around, I noticed two other men sitting on the couch, both giving me unsettling looks. I greeted them, but only got a slight nod in return. Marcus called down from upstairs, saying he was trying to find Jasmine, which felt strange. As I scanned the room, I saw another man sitting at the dining room table, also staring at me. A sense of unease crept over me, and instinctively, I took a step back, reaching for the front door without turning my back to the men. Just as I grabbed the doorknob, one of them shouted, "Get him!" In a split second, I flung the door open and sprinted to my car. They were right behind me. I barely made it into my car in time before they reached it, pounding on the windows and trying to break in. Fortunately, I managed to drive away just in time. Even though this happened on a quiet residential street, it didn't seem to attract much attention. I drove straight home, still shaken, and told my parents what had happened. They were shocked and urged me to contact the police. I did file a report, and fortunately, a neighbor who witnessed the commotion anonymously corroborated my story. The police eventually arrested 3 of the men from the house, including Marcus, though the 4th man was never found. Despite this terrifying experience, I didn't stop using dating apps altogether. But I definitely became a lot more cautious moving forward.
Number 2.
At the time of the story, I had already met a few people through an online dating site called Connect Match. My experiences had been mixed. 2 connections didn't work out, and I briefly dated the 3rd person for about 4 months. After that relationship ended, I decided to take a break from serious commitment and instead look for something more casual and low-key. That's when I matched with a girl named Emma. We hit it off decently well while chatting on the app, and she seemed interested in coming over to hang out at my apartment. It felt like a relaxed plan for a casual night. About half an hour after we made the plan, Emma arrived at my place. She was quiet and reserved in person, a bit more so than I expected based on our conversations online. We spent most of the evening in my room upstairs, watching TV in the background and chatting. The conversation felt a little stilted, with awkward silences that I tried my best to fill. The whole time, I couldn't help but wonder if there was a chance we might kiss. I kept debating whether she expected me to make a move or not. As the hours passed, though, I began to sense something was off. Emma's demeanor grew increasingly detached. She started speaking more slowly, often staring off into space, and her topics of conversation became unexpectedly dark and intense. The shift in her behavior was unsettling. Then, out of nowhere, Emma thanked me for letting her stay over. I was taken aback. When I had invited her to hang out for the night, I didn't realize she intended to literally spend the night. She got off the bed and asked where she could find a blanket for the floor. Unsure how to respond, I grabbed some blankets and pillows, making a makeshift bed for her. She thanked me again and lay down on her side, facing away from me. It was awkward, to say the least. I turned off the TV and tried to sleep, but the tension in the room made it difficult. I eventually drifted off about half an hour later. I was abruptly woken up in the middle of the night. Something felt off. I sat up and looked at the floor where Emma was supposed to be sleeping, but she wasn't there. Confused, I turned on the lamp and scanned the room. No sign of her. That's when I heard a voice coming from downstairs. It sounded like Emma. The walls in my apartment were thin, so sounds traveled easily. I quietly got out of bed and tiptoed to the top of the stairs. I could hear Emma speaking softly, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. My initial thought was that she was on the phone with someone, so I cautiously made my way downstairs to check. When I reached the dark kitchen, I found her. She wasn't on the phone. She was just sitting in one of the chairs, staring at the wall and muttering to herself. The sight sent a chill down my spine. I stood frozen for a moment before finally saying her name. Emma? She slowly turned her head to look at me. She held my gaze for a few seconds, then turned back to the wall without saying a word. Feeling deeply unsettled, I quickly retreated upstairs to my room and called my dad. It took a few attempts before he answered, and I could tell he was worried by the tone of my voice. I quietly explained that a girl I had invited over from an online app was acting extremely strange, and now she was sitting in my kitchen talking to herself. My dad, sounding just as confused as I felt, advised me to call 911 if I thought she might be having some sort of mental health episode. I was contemplating my next move when I suddenly noticed a figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. My heart skipped a beat. It was Emma. All I could see was the outline of her slender figure, standing there silently for what felt like an eternity. My dad was still on the phone, repeating, "Hello," as I stared at her. Then, without warning, Emma lunged at me, screaming as she charged. She grabbed me by the throat, trying to choke me. Instinct took over, and I managed to overpower her, pinning her down on the bed. I yelled into the phone for my dad to call the police. Somehow, I was able to drag her downstairs while holding her off until the cops arrived. When the police finally showed up, they took her away. I had to fill out a few forms and explain what had happened, still shaken by the whole ordeal. That night taught me a valuable lesson. When meeting people from online platforms, always choose a safe, public place for the first encounter. You never know who you're really inviting into your life.
Number 3.
I've been single for most of my life, but I've used dating apps like Matchmate and Quick Chat for fun over the years. Sure, I've met some interesting and odd people through them, but nothing could have prepared me for the events of February 2014. It was the dead of winter, the perfect time of year when dating apps are especially handy if you're looking for casual connections since outdoor activities are limited. I was using Quick Chat at the time and had several conversations going with different people. As often happens, most of these conversations fizzled out quickly, but one conversation kept going strong. The person on the other end was a woman named Alina. Every time I received a notification from Quick Chat saying, "Alina sent you a new message," I felt a little surge of excitement. Eventually, I asked if she was interested in hanging out that night, and she agreed. She even asked for my address. Without thinking twice, I gave it to her. She said she'd head over soon. I then asked for her number so we could text instead of using the app, but she didn't reply. After a few minutes, her status showed that she was offline. The app did that when someone wasn't active for a while, so I figured she'd come back online eventually. I waited patiently, passing the time by watching TV. I kept checking the app periodically, but she stayed offline. An hour went by, and it was getting pretty late. I started to feel tired, so I figured the plan was off and decided to head to bed. The next morning, I woke up early. It was raining lightly, and the sky was still dim. I checked the time. It was 6:30 a.m. Relieved that it wasn't too late, I planned to go back to sleep. But before I did, I grabbed my phone to check for any new messages or notifications. To my surprise, I had a few notifications from Quick Chat. Alina had messaged me several times during the night. I opened the app, rubbing my eyes as I scrolled through the messages. The first one, sent around 3 a.m. read, "Hey, I'm coming now." Then, At 3:20 a.m., she sent, "I'm here." My heart skipped a beat when I read the next message from 4 a.m. "I'm watching you." I immediately felt a wave of unease wash over me. My heart started pounding as I glanced around my room. I rushed to the window and peeked outside, scanning the area for any signs of someone lurking in the shadows. Seeing nothing, I quickly shut the blinds. Then, another notification came through. It was a new message from Alina. "How did you sleep?" A cold shiver ran down my spine. I could feel the anxiety building up as I typed back, "Who is this?" 10 seconds later, I received a chilling response. "Check your closet and find out." I looked across the room at my closet door. I was certain it had been closed when I went to bed, but now it was slightly ajar. I was so shaken I could barely breathe. Then, as I watched, the closet door slowly creaked open, revealing only darkness inside. In a panic, I started screaming for my dad. I had to pass by the closet to leave my room, but all I could think about was getting out. I ran to my dad's room, only to remember that he wasn't home that weekend. My older brother was, though, and he came rushing in to see what was going on. I told him what had happened, and together we checked the closet. There was no one inside, no sign that anyone had been there. That's when I realized I had made a big mistake. I hadn't locked my window the night before. It suddenly made sense. Someone could have easily slipped in. The next day, I went to the police station to report the incident and show them the messages. Unfortunately, they told me it wouldn't be easy to track the person without going through a lot of legal procedures. I would need court orders for QuickChat to release the user's information. In the end, I decided not to pursue it further. Luckily, after a long week of feeling paranoid and scared, nothing more happened. I was able to move on with my life, but that experience taught me to be a lot more cautious with online interactions.
Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.